Ooh, I can Swain plus Ezreal. Alright, yeah. We'll try to make this difficult on our opponent. Because now we're playing 2 win conditions, while also having Leviathan, which will serve as a win condition in and of itself. Hey everyone, Raptor Spank here. Today we have another episode of On the Grind, the show where I cover a deck I'm playing in Ranked. I'll break down the deck, a couple of flex spots, and some basic mulligans. Then we'll put the deck through some ranked matches and review how we do afterwards. This episode I'm looking at NPz Ezreal Swain combo / control. The deck uses a horde of Noxus and Piltover removal to control our opponents while turbo leveling Ezreal and Swain. Then we use our champions to blow up our opponents quickly. We have access to the potent Swain Leviathan lock to close out the game, as well as ample Piltover spells to trigger Swain stuns or Ezreal burn. Let's look at the champion package. This starts with 3 copies of Ezreal. The 3 cost 1/3 with Elusive, Nexus Strike, create a fleeting Mystic Shot in hand. He levels up once you've targeted enemies 6+ times, and then he becomes a 2/4, and when you cast a spell, deal 1 to the enemy Nexus. If the spell targets an enemy, deal 2 instead. His champion spell is Mystic Shot, the 2-cost fast spell, deal 2 to anything. This is one of our main win conditions. It generates burn / removal anytime we can hit our opponent's Nexus with him, and it profits off playing defensively. We can use all of our control cards, which will level up Ezreal quickly, and then we can just slap him as a level 2 and start triggering him to deal a bunch of damage to our opponent. The champion spell is also burn and can be used as removal, so it works as either a win condition or removal, and his level up triggers, which will do extra damage even if we're pointing at the Nexus, but even if we have to use it for removal, it will still do a ton of damage to our opponent's Nexus. The goal is to level him up, then blast away while threatening elusive damage. Then we have 3 copies of Swain. The 5 cost 3/6 with Fearsome. Nexus Strike, deal 3 to the enemy Nexus. He levels up once you've dealt 12 non-combat damage. Then he becomes a 4/7, and when you deal non-combat damage to the enemy Nexus, stun the strongest back row enemy. Nexus Strike, deal 3 to all enemies and the enemy Nexus. His champion spell is Ravenous Flock, the 1-cost fast spell, deal 4 to a unit if it's damaged or stunned. This is our second main win condition. It levels up quickly and dishes out tons of damage. The stun makes it easier to force a Swain through, because even with a little bit of damage to the Nexus, we can often stun their units that can block Fearsome, which will allow Swain to get through and wipe their board or just deal a ton of damage. Flock also helps to level up both him and Ezreal, so his champion spell is also highly useful, just like Ezreal's is. Leveling Ezreal typically means also leveling Swain, so we'll often get both of them leveled up just over the course of playing the deck and doing what we want to do. We don't have to try all that hard to level up either one of them. Now let's look at the follower package. This starts with 3 copies of Zaunite Urgent, a 1-cost 2/1. Play, discard 1 to draw 1. This is a high-powered 1-drop that cycles a card. It digs us towards our win conditions, and it can pressure the slow matchups early. This is also a great chump blocker for aggro matchups, since 2 power lets it kill a lot of things that it would block, even if it will also die. Then we have 2 copies of House Spider, the 2-cost 2/2. When summoned, summon a Spider Leg. This is 2 units for a fairly cheap cost, and so it goes wide to either go aggressive or block, depending on what our matchup is. Against control, it's going to be good for early damage, and against aggro, it's going to be good for blocking and hopefully trading with multiple units in one turn. Then we have 3 copies of Arachnoid Sentry, the 3-cost 3/2. Play, stun an enemy. This is a large, powerful body at a reasonable cost, so it can block Fearsome. And the stun helps to level up Ezreal or enable Ravenous Flock, since Ravenous Flock can hit stunned units. It also just slows down our opponents, since we can use it to essentially fog a turn against some of their bigger or harder to deal with units, like things like Tryndamere or Trundle. Then finally, we have 3 copies of the Leviathan, the 8-cost 5/8 with Overwhelm. Play, draw Swain, and round start, deal 1 to the enemy Nexus 3 times. This is a huge late game bomb. It can serve as a win condition totally on its own without anything else because of the damage it does every turn. It doesn't even have to attack, but since it's a 5/8 with Overwhelm, it can also deal a lot of damage by attacking. And it finds us our Swain, so it does give us essentially 2 win conditions for the cost of 1. It also helps to level up our Swain from the damage every turn. And the important part is the Swain Leviathan lock. If we have both out, then every turn it's going to stun the 3 best units our opponent has, which is good for preventing them from killing us, but also good for killing them, because that can often stop anything that would block Swain, so we can force the damage through. So it just, in general, works really, really well with what our deck is trying to do, and provides a very reliable late game bomb. Now, let's look at the spell package. This starts with 3 copies of Thermogenic Beam, the 0-cost slow spell. To play, spend all of your mana. Deal that much to a unit. This is a flexible catch-all removal. It can kill units with up to 13 health, and it can be cast as early as turn 1 to deal with something like, say, a Legion Saboteur against aggro. It can also be cast at 0, which won't deal any damage to a unit, but if we have a flipped Ezreal out, that'll deal 2 damage to our opponent's Nexus, so we can always use that just to close out the game. Then we have 3 copies of Ravenous Flock, the 1-cost fast spell, deal 4 to a unit if it's damaged or stunned. This is extremely powerful for cost removal, however it does require certain conditions to be met to go off, which does leave you open for a number of problems, particularly against Targon. Because if they can heal the unit before Ravenous Flock would resolve, then it actually will just fizzle because the unit's no longer damaged. And they can even do weirder combos like hushing their unit if it's stunned to prevent the flock from going off. So there's a number of ways to fizzle this spell. But again, it's 4 damage for 1 mana. That's incredibly good at leveling Swain, especially very quickly. And it just combos with a lot of things that our deck can do. Then we have 3 copies of Mystic Shot, the 2-cost fast spell, deal 2 to anything. This is flexible low-cost removal that can also be pointed at the Nexus as a win condition or just a way to trigger Ezreal. It helps level Ezreal and Swain pretty well, so it just does everything we're looking for the deck to do and can help in basically any board state. Then we have 2 copies of Culling Strike, the 3-cost fast spell, kill a unit with 3 or less power. This is a powerful Ezreal trigger since it can it targets a unit, but also it catches a lot of relevant targets that our other removal might have harder times lining up against, like Weirding Stone, Soraka, Ezreal, Tom Kench. There's a lot of things that this will actually kill in the current metagame that's very, very important to hit, especially on the early turns, which at 3 mana, this is pretty easy to pull off. Then we have 3 copies of Death's Hand, the 3-cost fast spell, deal 2 to an enemy and 1 to the enemy Nexus. This is good removal that also hits the Nexus, and it's great with a leveled up Ezreal since it's going to do essentially 3 damage to your opponent's Nexus because it targets a unit and hits your opponent's Nexus, and it's going to kill something. So it's just a great payoff in a sense for that, and it's a very solid Swain level up since it deals a total of 3 non-combat damage, so that's a quarter of the way to leveling up your Swain right there off a single spell. And it's a fairly early removal spell, so that also really helps, especially in aggro matchups. Then we have 2 copies of Scorched Earth, the 3-cost fast spell, kill a damaged unit or destroy a landmark. This is another catch-all for a deck. Any damage spell or combat damage plus this is removal against any unit our opponent can muster, even something like a 2020 They Who Endure. If we can ping it and then Scorched Earth it, it won't matter how big it is. It'll kill it. And so this can catch a lot of threats like that. But it's also important that this can take out key landmarks, like Starspring particularly, but even a Howling Abyss, it can be really, really good, especially at a low cost. Then we have 2 copies of Gotcha, the 4-cost fast spell. When drawn, costs 2 less this round. Deal 3 to a unit. This is often cheap, heavier removal than some of our other things like Mystic Shot. It can level Ezreal and Swain nicely. It's often costly. It can be 4 mana quite a bit. It's really sad to draw it on, say, turn 1 when you definitely can't cast it. But it deals a fair amount of damage for leveling up Swain, and it's just another way to get to level 2 Ezreal. Then we have 3 copies of Static Shock, the 4-cost fast spell, deal 1 to an enemy or the enemy Nexus, and then 1 to another. Draw 1. This is an all-star removal for the deck. It hits 2 targets, so that turbo levels Ezreal. It cantrips, which is great, and it can also be pointed at the Nexus. So with a level 2 Ezreal, we can hit the opponent's Nexus and a unit. So we get to hit their Nexus and trigger the target and enemy unit Ezreal burn. So it's really, really good for that. It helps to level Swain too. It doesn't do a ton of damage, but it can do, well, it does 2 if you point at the Nexus and the enemy unit. So it does help to get towards Swain. So it just does everything we want, and it's not that expensive mana-wise. Finally, we have 2 copies of Progress Day, the 8-cost burst spell, draw 3, then reduce those cards' cost by 1. This is a late-game dig to refill our hand, and it's more likely to allow you to cast other spells afterwards or cards afterwards because of the fact that it reduces their cost. So it's not that hard to cast this 8-cost spell and then cast more things. So it's just a all-around great card. Now let's cover a couple of flex spots. First off, you could definitely mess with the numbers in this deck because it really depends on what you're looking for. I've added 3 Urchins to the list to deal with aggro, But you can always drop the 3 urchins and add a house spider, a gotcha, and a progress day just to complete our playsets and make the deck a little more consistent in those regards. I just feel that that having more turn 1 plays is very relevant in the meta where it's at right now because Bilgewater Burn wasn't nerfed, discard aggro is buffed, so those decks are still very much out there and very much a threat. So I like to have the Zonite Urchin, but you can definitely play with the list a little bit more to basically increase consistency. Now, this is basically an entirely new deck, but you can drop Swain for 3 Dravens. The 3 cost 3/3 with quick attack, player strike, create a spinning axe in hand. He levels up once he's struck with 2 total spinning axes, and then he becomes a 4/4 with overwhelm. And anytime you play him or he strikes, he'll create 2 spinning axes in hand now. His champion spells Whirling Death, the 3 cost fast spell, battling ally strikes a battling enemy. This is much more aggressive than Swain, and the spinning axes provide free Ezreal triggers, essentially, since they're 0-cost spells. Even if it's only 1 damage, that's still extra damage, and it can pump the damage that Ezreal attacking on his own does, since it gives additional power. This is definitely way more aggressive than the Swain, but it does have a lot more weaknesses in the late game. Axes do give us an answer to Culling Strikes out of our opponent, though, so that can be good for the mirror matchup for getting Ezreal out of Culling Strike range. But if you do go this route, it is much more of a deck overhaul than, say, just a flex spot. So you also probably want to drop the Leviathan since they don't draw Swains anymore. So you could drop that and basically just try to make the deck a little more aggressive, add things like House Spiders, or you could drop the gotchas for stuff like Get Excited, because now you have spinning axes you can pitch to Get Excited, so the discard's not that big of a deal. And that will also be more aggressive than gotcha, since you can point it at the Nexus. Which that does bring us to the next flex spot. Even if you don't go the Draven route, you can drop the gotchas for 2 to 3 Get Exciteds, the 3 cost fast spell to play, discard 1. Deal 3 to anything. Unlike Gotcha, this can be used as burn, so there's more flexibility to the spell. The downside is there's no potential to cast it at 2 mana aside from hitting it off a progress day. And you have to discard something, which without workshopping the deck a little bit, we don't have many great discards. That's why it's better with Draven, because Draven does create a lot of good stuff to discard. You can also drop Gotcha or Scorched Earths for 1 to 2 Tribeam Improbulators, the 4-cost slow spell, deal 1 to a unit, summon a random 1-cost follower. While in hand, increase both by 1 when you play a 3-cost card. This is reasonably strong board control piece that synergizes with Ezreal and Swain very well, because this does kill something in theory, and also give you another unit to block with, so that's why it's very good for controlling the board, even though it only hits one thing. And we have a lot of ways to upgrade this, since there's lots of 3-cost spells, from our Scorched Earths, Death's Hand, we've got Arachnoid Sentry. There's just lots of things we can do at 3 mana that will make this bigger and bigger and better and better. The slow speed is a major hindrance, though, since we can't use it in combat to deal with an attacker, so we have to use it before our opponent's able to go to combat, so there's definitely a number of weaknesses with it, but it is a very strong card in this deck. You can also swap the 3 Zonite Urchins with 2 to 3 Rummages, the 1-cost burst spell. Discard 2 to draw 2. If you have exactly one other card in hand, discard 1 to draw 1. This is an even better cycler, since it draws 2 cards rather than only 1, though you do have to discard 2 cards for that. But what's the big difference between this and Urchin is that this does trigger Ezreal. It's only 1 damage off his level 2 trigger, but it does give you more damage, whereas Zonite Urchin won't actually trigger Ezreal, so this does increase your damage. But it doesn't give you a body, so that does make it weaker against aggro. And like I said, without making a lot of changes in the deck, the discard can actually be a bad thing. Now, you can also always swap some removal, the Zonite Urchins, the Sentries, or the Leviathans if you're bringing in Draven, for 3 copies of Chump Wump, the 4-cost 4/3. When summoned, create 2 Mushroom Clouds in hand. This is a large body for a lowish cost, or relatively low cost. And it creates Mushroom Clouds in hands, which are really great for triggering Ezreal, essentially, even though it'll only do 1 damage off the pings. That's basically 2 damage for 2 mana off of using these. And they can also be used as discard fodder for either spinning axes or rummages, etc., or Get Excited, so that's really good. And then if you use Mushroom Clouds, your opponent's going to draw Puff Caps eventually, which are going to deal extra little bits of damage, which, with a recently lower damage output out of level 2 Ezreal, this could be actually pretty critical for achieving the win. You can also replace the 2 copies of Progress Day with 2 Augmented Experimenters, the 6-cost 3/3. play, discard your hand, draw 3, deal 3 to an enemy. This does force you to discard, but it still draws 3, and it's cheaper than Progress Day since it's 6 mana rather than 8, and it comes with a body stable to it that can block Fearsome, so it's actually a pretty strong body on its own. Not only that, but it has a trigger that levels Ezreal and Swain, so it does a lot of what our deck wants to do. The big thing is the cost reducer is not a huge loss, but that is something you lose. But more importantly, you have to discard your hand, and we tend to have a relatively full hand where we're not really empty-handed, so that's usually a negative. So Progress Day is a little bit better, I think, but both are really strong in this deck, so definitely reasonable flexes. Finally, you can replace a Leviathan, Progress Day, or something else with 1 copy of Captain Farron, the 8-cost 8/8 with Overwhelm. When summoned, create 3 Decimates in hand. This is a good closer with a solid body that happens to have a bunch of large burn tacked onto it, and it creates spells that can trigger Ezreal. Again, 1 damage isn't huge, but when you're casting a spell that deals 4 damage to the opponent's Nexus and it gets 1 extra point of damage, that's just a good way for closing out the game. So this does provide another reliable late-game payoff, but generally speaking, I prefer Leviathan over this, so you might want to cut something else, but you don't want to go too high cost because then you get a lot of really clumsy opening hands. Which, that brings us into our mulligans. Your mulligans with this deck are going to be really matchup dependent, even more so than I think any other deck I've done on the grind. But a rough blueprint is you kind of want a win condition, whether that's Ezreal, Swain, Leviathan, with a handful of low-cost units / removal. Against aggro, you really want to look for at least 1 low-cost unit with cheap or wide removal. Static Shock is really good here. House Spider is really good here. The Zaunite Urchin for turn 1 is really good. Thermogenic's even not that bad because that's a turn 1 answer for some of the scarier things that can come out of aggro decks. Leviathan and Progress Day are great against control, as well as early aggressive units like House Spider and Zaunite Urchin, because they might not have ways to deal with it early, so we can start forcing in a bunch of damage, and then we won't have to deal a ton of damage with our big win conditions, because by that point our opponent can probably kill most of the threats we develop. Culling Strike is great for Weirding Stones, as well as Early Aggression is against the Rush deck, because we can get a lot of damage in turn 1, turn 2, so Urchin plus House Spider can be very good for running them down, and then having an answer for the Weirding Stones, whether that's Gotcha, Culling Strike, whatever, that's really good. The worst case scenarios, they have something like Catalyst to ramp without us being able to kill it, but just in general, those removal spells are really great for that kind of deck. And the Swain the Leviathan lock is great against mid-range, so that's what you kind of want to look for. And that's the deck for this episode. You can find the deck code as well as a deck link in the description below if you want to try the deck out for yourself. Now let's jump into the matches. Alright, back to the Bilgewater Piltover Ezreal deck. Apparently this is the only deck people are playing. Well, it's some sort of Bilgewater PZ deck. Let's see. Thermogenic is great here. Leviathan is very good. That's our advantage over them in the matchup. I don't know if I can keep it, though. Static Shock plus Ravenous Flock is really good, though. You know what? I think I could try this. I can sort of deal with the early game here. The big problem is if they go Warning Shot, Jagged Butcher. Not everyone is running that version, so... Alright. That's not too bad. Alright, yeah, that is ideal. This is where we want to be. We have Ravenous Flock, which our opponent doesn't have. Am I willing to run an Ezreal out here? I don't think so. I think we're fine being the control deck in this matchup. So we'll go for that. See what our opponent does here, though. That's the real question. Wild.
Never lost a fair.
Okay, well, let's see. So that won't allow him to kill our Ezreal. So we're not going to waste our Mystic Shot because we can just Ezreal make a Mystic Shot, fire that at it. Because I don't believe there's anything he can have for 2 mana that will kill Ezreal outright. So we should be able to get the free hit. We should be able to get the free Mystic Shot. Oh, that's the Trail of Evidence. Nice. Now he does have something that could work. Okay, so that would kill Ezreal. So we're going to Static Shock. Hit this. Hit this, I think, and that will keep Ezreal alive for now. Alright, so we get our 2 triggers in. Get some damage in. Ezreal lives. We get 1 damage into the Nexus. Unfortunately, this Mystic Shot goes to waste, but I was not expecting the 0-cost Dreadway deckhand. So our opponent got incredibly lucky off that. That is his perfect draw there. That is exactly what he wants. We'll go for this. Try to kill the TF now. Take less damage. We'll still take the 2 from here, but that leaves us at 18 rather than 16, which is pretty big difference. I'm assuming Ezreal is dead. I really doubt that there's any way he lives through this turn. It is possible though, so how close is Swain? Not very. We're probably playing Swain next turn though.
It's not exactly legal, but it is exactly awesome.
Lord, that is scary. Is it worth hitting that? Yes. It is worth hitting that. It's unlikely to make a difference, but being able to Ravenous Flock Funsmith next turn is pretty important. Okay, so we're gonna lose Ezreal. That's unfortunate. Yeah, so we'll play Swain and hope they don't have Thermogenic. Although it is very tempting to run out this Urchin just to bait our opponent. No, I think we have to Swain here.
I became a soldier.
If he has Thermogenic, he has Thermogenic.
Deal me in.
Okay, so he has the stun. And it'll do more damage with Funsmith, so we have to kill the Funsmith. That is fine. As unfortunate, that is less than ideal, but that is fine. Okay, well that leaves Swain alive, but barely. How close is his Ezreal to leveling up? It's at 4 now, right? Our Ezreal is leveled up. If we lose this Swain, it's not end of the world because we have Leviathan to find him. Ooh, that is actually pretty good. Yeah, we will. Actually, can we take the hit? I think we can actually take the hit here. It's a little bit risky, but this allows us to use Mystic Shot to clear Twisted Fate and get the Ezreal trigger. It's a bit risky to go for the have our cake and eat it plan, but alright, we'll go for this. Okay, so he's gonna kill both. That is highly unfortunate. But we'll get our trigger, and Twisted Fate will die. We'll run out this Urchin, I think, and pitch one of our cards. Oh, was that enough to... Oh, that was enough to level up Swain. Well, now I see why they fought over it. Do I want to pitch? Actually, we want to pitch Leviathan here. Sentry is going to be potentially... Oh, interesting. Okay. What can I do here? I have a number of choices. Okay, we will... This is... Every play here is risky. But we're gonna go for this. What we really don't want our opponent to have is Warning Shot plus Riptide Rex. That is not a Riptide Rex. So that is pretty good. Okay. I think that's fine. Let's see what he plays next.
Vision to see what others cannot.
We're hoping he doesn't have a Fearsome unit. Okay, that's actually pretty lucky. Yes, we're going to take a bit of damage here. The important part is, this Swain hit will kill Deckhand, and it will drop Ezreal to 1, which will also kill him, which our opponent does not know. And that is our big advantage here. Not to mention, we do have Leviathan for next turn. Alright, so we'll kill this Ezreal. Perfect. Now, the scary part here is we are at pretty low health totals, both of us. Okay, so he has another Ezreal. That is bad. That is very bad for us. Oh. Yeah, I think we just have to play Leviathan and hope.
Bring these lands to their knees.
This is a pretty good board state for Riptide, at least, to survive through the hits. So that is the big advantage we have here. Oh man, he's close to combo killing us. Maybe we should have gone for Death's Hand plus Scorched Earth. Yep. That's rough. Can he kill us this turn? Another Mystic Shot does it. Okay. That'll hit us for 1. And he has it. Yep. And that's the game. We played that poorly. Just had to fight over that, but oh well. Yep, our opponent got a little bit lucky, and we played a little bit poorly. But yeah, that's the big difference between that deck. I find it a little weird that everyone's playing the Bilgewater one as an Ezreal deck rather than a tempo deck, but we saw the better part of it there. Well, on to the next. Alright, well, here's the Bilgewater Spring deck. On the bright side, as I mentioned in Meta Check, by playing Noxus, we have access to Scorched Earth, so that's our best find because it deals with their primary win condition. Culling Strike is also really, really good here. Ravenous Flock is really good. I don't think we can keep Leviathan. I think that's too greedy. Thermogenic's tempting, but I think we could do better than that. Like I said, we really need Scorched Earth. Oh, there we go. Perfect. All right, this hand is great. Not to waste our opponent's time real quick, but I want to talk about this real quick. Culling Strike is a great answer for Tahm Kench, Soraka, all these things. They have a very hard time pumping power, for example. Ravenous Flock is a legitimate turn 1 play because they might play something that hurts itself, and Scorched Earth deals with their primary win condition. Ezreal should also be pretty hard for them to deal with, so that's really good for us. Yeah, we are in great shape. This is where we want to be. Now keep in mind, we are not going to instantly Scorched Earth a Star Spring. We are totally fine waiting for the late game for that. Okay, we're going to play Ezreal though. Like I said, our opponent should have a hard time dealing with Ezreal, since their deck does not run much removal. The best they'll have is something like a Tahm Kench, and we have removal for Tahm Kench. Alright, perfect. So the scary part here is that he has mana open for healing, so he can heal in response to Ravenous Flock, which will whiff the spell. So that's something to be very careful of if you're playing this deck yourself, is that your opponent has that available to them. Okay, cool. We got rid of that. That's one of the biggest threats from their deck. But yeah, just be aware of that. Ravenous Flock is really good in this matchup, but there's plenty of ways for your opponent to make it bad for you. Swain should also be pretty good here, because Hush is their best answer to it. Alright, we will Death's Hand. The reason we're firing this now is that while we won't kill Star Spring, if we can prevent them from healing units, we kind of want to deal with their units before they're able to do... Basically, before they're able to control the board. Now, this time, I'm going to actually try this Ravenous Flock. Because at 3 mana, I don't think my opponent has enough ways to fully heal Boxtopus, and as long as it's not full health, this Ravenous Flock kills it. So I think we're pretty safe to play Ravenous here. Alright, perfect. That's one of the bigger threats out of their deck as well, because it can block Swain, and it can kill Ezreal. So that was a priority target. Alright, now we will play Swain, who's actually almost leveled up. Holy crap. See what our opponent has. Tahm Kench. Awesome. We are totally okay with Tahm Kench. He's going to take a hit from Swain here, or should, which will level up Swain. And then... Oh, he has Hush. Okay. Hush plus Pale Cascade? Okay. So we lose Ezreal, and that's unfortunate. But again, this Tahm Kench will very likely die next turn. because I have a number of ways to do it. That's the important part here. I have a number of ways to kill his top catch. Such as Culling Strike. I have Culling Strike, I have Scorched Earth, I have Thermogenic. I have a handful of ways to get rid of this top catch.
I'm sure there's something for my tastes.
So let's see, if we Culling Strike, we have 4 mana open. Alright, so we will fire this Culling Strike off. Best case scenario, our opponent has Bastion. Because we can strip Bastion. Okay, he has Pale Cascade. Let's see, so that'll drop it to 3? Man, I think we actually do... Yeah, I think we Scorched Earth here to kill Tahm Kench. That's scary, that's risky, but I think it's our best play. Because now we get Swain back, and Swain can win the game on his own. He can't bash in this. Okay, yep, yeah, and there we have it. Yeah, our opponent's game was pretty much over from that position. Things went very well for us. We found our Scorched Earth. But generally speaking, I actually think our deck matches up very well against Bilgewater Spring. So I'm not at all surprised by the outcome here. Although we did get a little bit lucky off the draw there. But we were able to catch our opponent shields down with the Boxtopus, so the Ravenous Flock would go through. Which is one of the better parts, is that turn 1 Codger dies to Ravenous Flock because they can't heal it. And there's just a number of things we can kill with that. Very scary to use Scorched Earth, our best card in the matchup, against something like Tahm Kench there. But we are in such a good position, because even if he plays Boxtopus next, which can block the Swain, he taps out all of his mana for that, which means the 1 mana Thermogenic that we have will kill Boxtopus, which means Swain will hit him next turn and deal 7 damage right then and there. And at that point, it's very unlikely he's able to combo off fast enough to win with Spring before we win. So that worked perfectly. So I guess on to the next. Alright. Interesting. I've actually never seen this combo. Targon Noxus. Interesting. Not really sure what the combo is with that, but I have a feeling we will find out. Decisions. It's tempting to keep Leviathan as our late game win condition, or our primary win condition with this hand. I have a feeling we might need to play the control deck, though. I feel like House Spiders could be good in this matchup. I feel like Mystic Shot could be good in this matchup. And I think there's a non-0% chance that Scorched Earth is good in combo with Mystic Shot. But you know what? I think we'll pitch Scorched Earth, because I think we could do better removal for this matchup, and we're going to keep Leviathan to have some sort of plan for the late game. Ironically, we just drew a card that's great with whatchamacallit, Scorched Earth. Oh, there's Scorched Earth anyways. Alright. Since our opponent did not do anything, are we willing to run out House Spiders? I don't think so. I think our late game might be stronger than theirs, though it is very hard to tell. But I think because of that we can go slow. Okay. Well, that is fine. So I think what we'll do here is maybe Death's Hand plus House Spiders.
Sunlight guide you, my brethren.
Although, maybe it's not worth doing House Spiders. But that's going to get us 3 towards Swain. And it's going to get us a target for Ezreal, so that's also good. Yeah, we're going to run out this House Spiders. There's some risk to this. He could have Death's Hand as well. So then we're helping him level up his Swain. But I think it's still worth it. Okay, so we get some damage through. That's good. That is ideal. Ooh, Ezreal's nice. I mean, it's going to be a while before we can play this Ezreal. I think Culling Strikes are very likely. I think it's very likely he got some removal off of that Priestess, so that's another concern. Yeah, I think we'll just pass. We're willing to take 3 damage here. We're willing to take 3 damage here. We're willing to lose 2 mana here. What it really comes down to is what our opponent might have. Huh. This is... Okay. Okay, so is this the idea? Is it self-damage things like Demolitionists combined with Daybreak units they'll have a bunch of health? If that's the case, that's cool. I like it. That's a neat payoff. I think we'll Mystic Shot here then, just to deal 2 to the Demolitionist, set it up to die to a Static Shock. I still don't think we're safe to play Ezreal. I think we want to just keep holding Ezreal and just save it for a win condition. Yeah, I think we could do this. Just fire it off first. Upside is we could possibly get some attacks through. Wow, that's a lot of Stack Shocks. It's gonna be a pretty quick Ezreal actually. Ooh, did he get a Leona? Actually, he could get Leona or Swain off that and play it this turn.
Our courage
Okay.
will never fade.
Oh, it doesn't have Daybreak though. Decisions. I think we'll Static Shock. Level our Ezreal up here. And then we won't swing with either of these. His Leona is pretty far from leveling up, so that's good. And now we can kill it next turn with Scorched Earth, which is probably what we'll be doing. There's definitely a non-zero number of places where we just play Swain instead.
Master your demons.
Okay. This is probably one of those circumstances where we do in fact play Swain.
Born a patrician,
I think there's a very real world in which that Swain is the best play here. We can chump block Leona, but we can't chump block Swain. And if Swain connects, that's going to be a lot of damage.
pledge or perish.
Now, obviously, blocking with Swain here isn't great, because there's a very good chance our opponent has Ravenous Flock, and clearly we do not. But we can now Scorched Earth kill him too, which is not too bad. And even better than Scorched Earth, we can actually kill that with Burn fairly easily. Okay, so I think we do run out Ezreal now.
I'm so good, I surprised myself. Time for a true display.
Because we have a lot of ways to trigger Ezreal. Okay. So, he does have the Culling Strike. Let's see. So I could do this to deal a decent bit of damage. I could do this to deal a decent bit of damage. If I do that, I don't think that works the way oh, it does work the way I want it to. Oh, because this will hit first.
I know you're thinking and stuff, but could you maybe speed things up a little?
Yeah, no, I think Death's Hand is the best play here. Downside here is if he Ravenous Flocks to kill Swain. But this is still... Oh. That's also pretty bad for us, but... The important part here is that we can kill both of his threats fairly easily. And Ezreal did get at least some damage through. Our hand being extremely high cost was pretty bad for us there, but... What is better? I think it's better to hit this and their Nexus. Because the one damage to Leona is probably not terribly relevant. Good news is we burned 2 of their Culling Strikes. Whoa! I did not expect Guiding Touch in this. Alright, well we will Scorched Earth then. We do not want Swain to live. Should be hard for him to full heal Swain, but it's not impossible. He could be a Star Shaping deck, and that would be unfortunate. Would have been better if we went like Static Shock, Scorched Earth. Or like Scorched Earth, Static Shock. So Static Shock would have triggered Scorched Earth. But didn't really expect the healing out of our opponent. I wonder, does he have healing? Because he's really thinking about this. Okay, he's healing himself. Interesting. Maybe he has Star Shapings in his deck, and that's what he's hoping for? Okay. Alright, we're good.
My legacy
We're alive. Ooh, that's good. That is one of our better draws. I don't think we play it, though. Okay.
Unbelievers will see the light.
Doesn't trigger Daybreak. I wonder if my opponent thought it would.
Remember the objectives.
Okay, you know, a little
Make
more
the
burn.
Empire proud.
Trying to think what our best plays here are. I think Ezreal's probably the best play here. He only has one Culling Strike left. Could have it, but if he doesn't, this Ezreal will work. That does not seem good for us. That seems very bad. Well, if that's the case, we will try to kill her in response. She's pretty far from full health, I think. And that will let us get our attack in. Yeah, that sucks. But he does live. He does live, and they don't get the stun off. Which is the important part there.
I don't miss.
The good news is we can play creatures after this. Okay, so he has Ravenous Flock. That's unfortunate because we can't cast Culling Strike anymore. So maybe I should have cast it in response to the Morning Light. That might have been better. We have blockers, though, so that is the good news. We'll bank the mana for Culling Strike, I think. We don't need to play Sentry. Be better to have Sentry up for some really scary threat this turn.
Clear it out.
Yeah, we'll block like that, I guess. And then I guess we play Leviathan?
Destination in sight.
Alright, that's good. We will take that. Swain is leveled up now, so that is good. See what our opponent has. Good news is we have Death's Hand off this Swain, so we have a lot of ways to force the Swain through, but our opponent does have ways to deal with Swain. I am certain of that.
Ours is the one true light.
Yeah, I guess we'll do this. Well, is it better to do this maybe? So he's got one spell in hand, two non-spell.
Bleed for Noxus.
Alright, well.
Leave them nothing.
Yeah, I mean, we're in pretty solid shape here.
Ends here.
That has him dead. So he has to have some sort of answer here. Okay, yeah, there we go. Interesting deck from our opponent, but we were able to get there. That was very, very close, though. I was starting to get very, very worried. He really thought about things there, so I wonder if he had better plays, or if he was really just figuring out that he didn't have anything. But he could have had Pale Cascade to block the Swain, which would have been bad for us. He could have had, whatchamacallit, Hush, so that he wasn't fearsome anymore, or didn't do damage to the Nexus off the hit. So he had potential options that he could have, but yeah, we got there, so we'll take it. On to the next. Alright, Fiora Shen. This is gonna be interesting. Culling Strike can be good. Wide Removal is going to be good here for sure. Culling Strike's good. Static Shock is potentially good for stripping Barrier. I don't think we want the Swain. I don't think we need a win condition. I think we just need to have ways to deal with our opponent. That could be good if we find Ravenous Flock. Death's Hand, pretty good. Alright. Well, let's see what our opponent does. Fiora. Alright. Let's try this. I think that should work. Okay. Oh, well, I suppose they could have had Sharp Sight. Maybe it was better to go for a different way, but they don't seem to have pump spells, so that is good to know. So, or if they do, it's Riposte, so And Progress Day can help us get to our win condition eventually. We can flip to more of an aggressive strategy once we've dealt with their Fioras, like all of them. Okay, so what do we want to do here? I think we want to Death's Hand here. Deal 2 to him. Get down to 3. Maybe we actually run out Arachnoid Sentry. I think that's actually fine. We can get some damage through here. I know that's kind of going against what I just said about going aggro, or waiting to go aggressive, but I think this is a big enough damage swing, and it doesn't risk us losing to Fiora. Not yet, anyways. That is what we don't want to play. We do not want to play a House Spider.
Dictates both our actions.
Okay. That's fine so far.
So I go.
Alright, well, we will go like this, I think. Try to do that. So he's got to have Deny for it. Or a Pump Spell, although Pump Spell won't actually work. That's the important part here. Okay. That's actually... Okay, I think we're gonna go for this. Although that will give me one less Static Shock activation, but then I take no damage. Although if I do this, I only take 3. Maybe we're okay with that. Maybe that's fine. Good chance we'll actually play this Swain, I think. Yeah, with Leviathan to go here, it's worth playing Swain. Depending on what our opponent plays, we might go for Scorched Earth on Shen. We don't want to run it into a Deny, though. This needs to work. Scorched Earth needs to work when we use it.
You're covered.
Duty, selflessness. The balance has been
Oh,
maintained.
that's true. Didn't think about leveling up the Shen there. Okay, well, since he doesn't have Fiora yet, we can run out House Spiders. We just want to keep Swain alive. That's the most important thing. Okay, that's still not a Fiora. I think we can start blasting things. So this still leaves up Scorched Earth, or Mystic Shot plus Scorched Earth. So we can always block here, block there, Mystic Shot here. Although he probably has a number of ways to protect. Okay, that is not something we will allow to happen. That is definitely not something we will allow to happen. Oh, I should Scorched Earth now, too. That's a mistake. Oops. Oops, that is not what we wanted.
Sense an imbalance.
Yeah, we messed that one up for sure. All right, well, that's unfortunate. Should have Mystic Shot plus Scorched Earth. Then he wouldn't be able to give shield to this. This turn would have gone so much better for us if we had done that. So, little unfortunate, but yeah, we'll have to deal with that. Man, this feels bad, but I think we do just have to play Leviathan here. He probably has a way to kill Swain, but if he doesn't, this works well. Scariest things he could do is play Fiora, because he probably has plenty of ways to play and buff Fiora. But yeah, we have our lock. If he can't deal with Swain, this will eventually lock our opponent out of the game. I'm assuming he has something like Concerted Strike, Single Combat, plenty of different things he can do. Concerted Strike, yep, that's the worst case scenario. Now we have the other Swain in hand. That's the good news. That's 2 Concerted Strikes down. He would have died anyways, even if we had done the last one correct, where he would have taken no damage. He still would have died to this. Depending on what our opponent plays here, we may run House Spiders out first. Okay. So we'll run House Spiders out. What it seems to be is that he's telegraphing an answer to Swain, so we won't even bother.
Darken the skies!
Alright, now Swain is leveled up at least. Ooh, I can Swain plus Ezreal. Alright, yeah. We'll try to make this difficult on our opponent. Because now we're playing 2 win conditions, while also having Leviathan, which will serve as a win condition in and of itself. And he needs Concerted Strike to really have this work for him. Alright, we'll play Ezreal.
They don't know what they're up against.
We kind of want to kill Protege. That's the big thing here. We don't want to risk Swain, because just Leviathan plus Swain is a great combo for us. So Swain needs to live, so it's not even worth it. Okay, it doesn't matter. Our opponent surrendered. Okay, perfect. I was a little bit worried how this matchup would go, and this is my first time actually playing it on this patch. So that was honestly a lot better than I expected, although the fact that he only had 1 Fiora was definitely helpful. We had a pretty big misplay too, which we still managed to win through, so that's pretty impressive, but we're at a much lower health total and much more at risk of rally effects than we should have been because of how we played. But yeah, pretty solid showing, I think, there overall. So not bad. Alright. That looks like aggro. Some sort of NPz burn, maybe? Or is it... Well, I suppose maybe it's 1-drop aggro, could be, or just some sort of aggro deck. House Spider should be good here. Static Shock should be good here. Swain can be, but I don't think we can risk that, and we definitely can't risk Progress Day. So I think we're just looking for more early game things, like Mystic Shot, and Ravenous Flock can actually work in a pinch. I mean, we did just mulligan away Swain, but it's not that bad. Unfortunately, our opponent's attacking turn 1, which we don't really have an answer for. I swear, you always draw gotcha on turn 1. It's like every time. Ooh, Culling Strike is actually insane here. Perfect. That is an answer for either one of his champions. Ooh, and he doesn't have a play this turn? Oh, he might have Make It Rain. Oh, nope. Okay, wow. Wow, I did not expect to get that kind of damage through. What's he got? Okay. What is the better play here? Gotcha or Culling Strike? Think we'll do Gotcha here. Because I think that's only going to get worse for us, maybe? I don't know. Culling Strike, I think, catches more things than Gotcha will, so... into this matchup. We'll see. It's very possible they're running something like... Riptide Rex, which that'll be more of a problem for us to deal with, but Gotcha also wouldn't have worked against that, so... see if we can get a little bit of damage through, or if now he's got to Make It Rain or some sort of removal. Thinking it through, though. Double Culling Strike, Thermogenic, Static Shock, Ravenous Flock. This is a great hand. Assuming our opponent is aggro, but these 2 champions highly suggest it. Okay, he does have the Make It Rain. That's fine, though. He still takes 2 damage here, and we're only going to take 1. Let's see what our opponent does, though. Black Market Merchant would be kind of unfortunate for us. Twisted Fate. Okay, well, now we will absolutely Culling Strike that before he gets anything else off. Alright, that's a little toxic, but I couldn't help it. We gotta use that new Kaisa emote. Oh, Death's Hand is great. Yeah, our hand is working really, really well. Yeah, I think I can actually just do that. I think I could just Death's Hand right off the rip, because that leaves Culling Strike available. Culling Strike, Thermogenic, potentially Ravenous Flock, but not really, because I don't have any way to really use it. Yeah, we'll kill that with this. Gets our Swain closer to leveling up. I suppose we could have tried to play Swain this turn, but do we play the Swain or do we swing? Think we play the Swain. He could have Thermogenic. That would be unfortunate. But if he doesn't have something with 3 power or more to play and he can't kill Swain, this will level Swain up. And we can bank a Ravenous Flock. Worst case scenario. We kind of don't want to risk our Swain, but I'm sure our opponent's deck has a lot of ways to deal with Swain. Oh, that's great. That's good. Oh, that's perfect, actually. That's fantastic. Because now we pull like this. I don't think they have... I suppose Suit Up, maybe? If they have Suit Up, that's insane, but... Alright, that's fine. Yep. So we'll take 2 damage. Swain gets hurt a little bit, but he levels up here, so he'll be in better shape now.
I will break them.
And our opponent is down to a pretty low health. And the creature he has on the board is not threatening in the slightest for us yet. We're 2 turns off from Riptide Rex, so we can even let this hit this turn if we want. We don't have to fight over it. We can Progress Day. That's pretty sweet. Chances are we'll have to respond to something our opponent does, but
Like a fish in water.
how worried am I about that? Okay, I don't think we're Progress Daying here. We'll just go for the kill here, I guess. Now he could well, he doesn't have Fervor. Right, he doesn't have Noxus available. But yeah, this is pretty solid because it'll kill this and stun this, so that buys us a fair amount of time. Which is where we want to be. The question is, can he kill our Swain? Because that would be bad for us. Okay, looks like he probably can. Okay, but he has to combine a lot of removal to make it happen, so that's fine. I mean, I guess it kills it before this goes off, so he can still hit me. If I want to let him hit me anyways. It's probably not worth using Culling Strike here. I think we're fine just banking the full mana here, and then probably Progress Daying next turn if I don't find anything good. Yeah, we'll Progress Day here. Ooh, another Progress Day is actually very good. Ooh, so is Leviathan, actually. Yeah, I'm fine with that. Now this time, I will Culling Strike Dreadhand if I have to prevent it from hitting. Because we are now in Riptide territory, it is worth doing things to prevent taking damage. This is where things become a little more debatable. Okay, I think we will cycle a Sentry. It's tempting to not play anything. We don't want to lose Leviathan to Riptide. That's the thing we're most scared of. Even though he can't attack this turn, so it's a little bit less scary. Okay, well, he can still play Riptide. Which would definitely kill Leviathan. Let's see if he plays it. Okay, he can't play Riptide anymore, we play Leviathan. Now we're good, now we're good. That solves all our problems. And we have a Swain for next turn. Plus sentries to go with it to force the damage through. Plus we can always use Static Shock to stun things. My opponent's down to only 3 cards. We have a fair amount of health. Not a ton, but we do have a fair amount. Okay, so... Wait, no, he doesn't have Scorched Earth. That's not a thing in his deck.
What's the worst that could happen?
Okay, so he's going to draw a bunch of cards, so that's good. That's good for him, I should say. What do we lose? Make It Rain, okay. Actually, Make It Rain could have been really good for him, so him losing that is not necessarily bad for us. It's going to be very hard for the Swain to actually get through. That's the big problem we're facing here.
By my hand will Noxus rise.
So, worst case scenario, he can hit our Nexus and Riptide Rex. That is what we do not want. Okay. That's hit our Nexus, but not Riptide Rex. Okay, so I think we play Cheap Sentry first. We play Cheap Sentry first. Actually, there's a good chance that we can just go wide here and win the game that way. even if he can block Swain. Because he has to be able to, like, block Swain and kill Leviathan.
Ye started without me.
What's better, Static Shock or... Well, we can't Static Shock and Ravenous, so I guess we do Sentry, stun another blocker. We can always use Ravenous Flock to kill one of his stun units. We're in fairly good shape here, but our opponent does have options. This could go bad for us. We kind of want to keep Leviathan alive because if it lives through next turn, that is lethal by itself. Alright, yeah, there we go. Alright, perfect. Yeah, we were in pretty good shape. I don't know what my opponent had, but we were in fairly good shape there. Because like I said, all we needed was Leviathan to live one more turn. I was pretty sure it wasn't going to happen, so that's why we were playing things. Because I assume because he did burn damage to it, that he had the 3 damage remaining to kill it. But if it lived to the next turn, it deals 3 damage, drops him to 1, we Static Shock, he dies, and we win the game. So we were in very, very good shape there. Very interesting take on NPz, but yeah, pretty neat. We were a little bit lucky that he didn't have anything too aggressive, but yeah, solid game. So a little bit of a caveat. It's early into the season, so I've actually gone 5-4. I only have 9 games. I've gone 5-4 on this deck. So I know I did a 4-1 split for the video. I was going to go with the 3-2, but the first 2 games in that row, in that streak, were both against Bilgewater Noxus. One was TF Swain, the other one was TF Ezreal, but the matchup plays very similarly, and in both games I got really weird hands. That was always a problem with the TF Swain deck, is that how the deck worked. You could get some really awkward hands because of all the Leviathans and Swains and other high costs, and this deck has that problem as well with Progress Day in addition to the Leviathans and all that. So this deck also has some kind of awkward hands that you can end up with, and I had some bad ones where theirs curved out really well. So they're a bit of a wash. I show the one. I show the TF Ezreal, but not the TF Swain. The TF Swain, I think we're favored in that matchup. I think we would have done really, really well, but they had the right stuff curve out for them, and my hand just kind of fell apart. And they both play very, very similarly. So I didn't want to show both of those when the other 4 games, for the most part, were pretty unique games. I mean, the TF Ezreal is kind of close to the MFTF, but they are different. And then the other decks in that set are very unique. So I like that it shows off those matchups. I wanted to show those, and I definitely wanted to show Fiora Shen in the Bilgewater Spring because those games were very, very good. The other decks I lost to, besides the 2 Bilgewater Noxus decks, was I lost to an Ionia Trundle Tryndamere Field Rush deck. They got extraordinarily lucky. That's just what it comes down to. They were running Mina, and they were able to get a good Mina off. So that just happened, and you do lose those games, unfortunately, and my hand was very slow. In addition, they also had Voice of the old one, so I had a slow hand. I wasn't able to punish them doing literally nothing. Well, more or less nothing until the Voice of the old ones. They played an Avaros and Sentry up until that turn, and that was it, which I killed with Mystic Shot right then and there, but all I had was a Zonite Urchin hitting them repeatedly, and I still almost killed them. I got to them to the point that burn alone was almost enough. So if I had even one House Spider, I probably would have won that game. So I think that one's just kind of a throwaway. It's a card game. You sometimes lose to luck. And I think that's largely what that is. Although I do think that Field of Rush decks could be problematic for us, especially the Voice of the old ones. But like we have Culling Strike and a number of different ways to kill, say, a Weirding Stone. So those decks aren't as bad for us. And Scorched Earth actually works really well with Trundle. So I think that matchup can work well for us. But I think if they can get to the late game, we're doomed, because their late game is much, much better than ours, unless we can land Leviathan plus Swain, which is probably a lot less likely against the Shadow Isles variant, but again, they had Mina to bounce my stuff, so that really was enough. So we lost to that, and I lost to Discard Aggro. For those of you who don't know, I have an Instagram. I don't use it very often, but I think the Discard Aggro game is going to end up on there. That was an incredibly, incredibly close game, but my opponent did manage to find one of their last two Get Exciteds for lethal, unfortunately. And they had just a really great curve out, so they had a very aggressive hand with Vision and Draven. So they had Draven Spinning Axe, discarding Vision, plus the taunt unit to pull my stuff, so they got max damage through. So that happened, and if they didn't, actually, that's the funny part, is if they didn't have all of that, if they were missing even one piece of that, whether even the taunt unit, if they were just missing that, I would have won the game, because they literally had Get Excited, discarding their last card to deal 3 to me while I was at 3 health, and if they didn't do it, I win the game, because I had lethal if I could play things. Because the problem was I had to play things, because I had a flipped Ezreal, I had a flipped Swain, all they had was one Daring Poro, so with another copy of Daring Poro in hand and an unknown, which ended up being Get Excited. I was at 3 health. I'll probably post at least the end of that because it was so close. I forget what they were down to. I think they were at 5. I was at 3 going into the last turn, so that's definitely going to be a bit more of a coin flippy matchup, but I think we should be favored. I think my hand was a bit slow, and they really had an incredible run of it. They had double Draven, they had Jinx, and an easy way to level her up. They leveled her up the turn they played her. Luckily, it cost them enough mana that they couldn't use the rocket, and we were able to kill Jinx the next turn, but we had to do some really unfortunate things to make that happen. We had to use was it Death's Hand? No, it was Gotcha plus Mystic Shot to kill. Oh no, it was Death's Hand plus Mystic Shot with a Scorched Earth in hand. We had to use both of those to kill her, and then take the full damage from the units because we only had Scorched Earth and nothing was damaged. So lots of unfortunate things happened in that game, but it was a pretty hype match, so I'll probably post some of it to Instagram. We'll see if I get around to that. And then finally, I played against Spooky Ezreal, which I won that matchup. A little bit scary. That matchup feels very difficult, but we had Leviathan basically slowly grinding out our opponent. If they dealt with Leviathan, they knew we would slam a Swain that they wouldn't be able to deal with, and then that would take over the game. So we just basically presented that scenario and just kept passing and let Leviathan slowly chip down their health, because then there was a possibility we could just win with burn as well. And that's what we actually got down to. In the end, they finally killed Leviathan, but they tapped out all their mana to do it with only a Funsmith on the board, so we were going to Culling Strike the Funsmith and then hit them for 4 off Swain, plus 3 from a Sentry. That would have dropped him to 3 with a Mystic Shot and Static Shock in hand. Very favored to win from that point. But that matchup still feels really weird because they have great removal that deals with all of our threats, so it seems very hard to do, but especially with the life gain that they have too, but we did take it, so it is doable. All in all, I definitely feel like this deck is going to play very similar to TF Swain. It has a lot of different tricks with the Piltover package, and obviously Ezreal works very differently from Twisted Fate. You're going to be worse off into the aggro matchups because Twisted Fate is exceptionally good, as well as Make It Rain. And Kegs are really good into the aggro matchups, so you're going to be a little bit worse into those matchups. But the Ezreal provides a much better win against, I think, slower decks and more controlling decks / mid-rangey decks because of his elusive ability and just turning all of your spells into damage dealers. Not to mention having Progress Day is a great addition for drawing a ton of cards and cheapening them. So I think this is very similar to where TF Swain is, or how TF Swain plays. So if you like that, this is a pretty solid pick for it. While I did go 5 and 4 with it, I feel like if I were to play a lot more games with this, which I probably will play a fair amount more, I think the win rate would go up because I think I got a little unlucky in some of the matches, and I think that is a big risk with this deck. But also, I think it's a pretty difficult deck, or a certain amount of difficult deck to play, because you have to really know when to go aggro and when to not, and when to hold removal, when to not, when to play Ezreal, when to not. There's a lot of really important decisions, so I think this is a deck where the more you play it, the better it'll be. And I have played this deck a lot in the past. For those of you who don't know, this deck has been around for quite a while. I've personally preferred Draven to Swain back when this deck was big, because the Draven one was far more aggressive and comboed off a lot quicker. But I think right now, I think the Swain one is better because Swain, late game Swain is exceptionally strong, and the Swain Leviathan package is still an incredibly powerful win condition against a lot of decks. And it can be really good into things like Field Rush, because if they don't have removal, Swain plus Leviathan means that they'll never be able to attack, and that will win you the game. It is pretty hard to get that off against a deck like that, but it is possible. So it does give you more options than alternatives, than like the Draven version would for those matchups. So I think this is a very reasonable deck to be playing right now. I think it's an interesting way to use Ezreal, and it's definitely an Ezreal deck, unlike playing, say, like Tempo Ezreal, like TF Ezreal. At least the traditional version of it. I don't know what everyone else is playing, but that's why I considered doing for today's episode, was doing the Tempo version, where Ezreal's not really the game plan, but it has a lot of ways to level up Ezreal, and he provides a pretty reliable way to close out against control decks. Obviously, in that version, the nerf to Riptide Rex plus the nerf to Make It Rain does make it better that he levels up at 6 now instead of 10. I mean, 10 was almost impossible for the Tempo one to level him up because the Tempo one's not dedicated to leveling him, so it doesn't have a lot of ways to do it. It was mostly Riptide or bust. But once you get to 10, it's like incredibly hard for even that to work. But at 6, Riptide Rex by himself, if he targets successfully with Cannon Barrage and every Cannon Barrage hits a unit, that will level up Ezreal right there from 0. So I did think about playing that version, but that's not really an Ezreal deck. You're kind of like a weird aggro-y deck that has Riptide Rex and Ezreal to win the late game. I think that could be a reasonable version to play too, but I really like the look of this. I saw a couple of top-tier players were running this list, so I thought that was a really neat way. I didn't really think about the Swain version because I underrated it so much in the past, because honestly it was one of the worst versions of Ezreal you could run. It was just outperformed by especially Tempo Ezreal and Ionia Ezreal, but even I think Draven Ezreal performed better than it, so I kind of didn't think of it right away, but I think it actually is in a pretty decent place for where the meta is right now, so I definitely like that about it. It's a pretty fun deck just in general. I'm very happy to see Ezreal back. It's a little early to say exactly where every deck will fall in the meta because it's new. The patch just came out, so we'll see how things settle out. Like, we didn't see any Spooky Karma. I'm sure we'll see more Spooky Karma in the future. I actually think Spooky Karma is probably better than Spooky Ezreal, like, just straight up. I think it just has way more advantages by being in Ionia and gaining things like Deny, and especially Deep Meditation is incredible. Not to mention Karma's really effective for increasing the go hards, whereas Ezreal is going to be pretty hard to keep the engine running. You're going to have to run stuff like Progress Day to make it work. So I think Spooky Karma will probably outperform it. So then that's probably the better play because they're both control decks, but it's going to be something we won't really know until we see how it shakes out. So this was just a fun deck. I think it's a decent deck you could consider playing right now. We'll see where it's looking in a week. Maybe if I remember, I'll mention it in Meta Check next week with an update on how it's doing, so I can give you a little more complete picture on the deck by then. But yeah, fun deck to check out if you're interested in playing Ezreal and want to do something a little bit different from what everyone else is doing at the moment. Then this is the deck for you, that's for sure. So thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment below, and subscribe for more videos just like it.